Hi, and welcome to this uh, As Sudden as It Can Be podcast. And thank you so much for joining me, Richa. Would you like to introduce yourself in a line or two for our audience, please?
My name is Madhuri. Monday is a very good friend of mine. Uh, I work with CGT as a manager. Many of you must not be knowing what is CGT it's a credit guarantee fund trust for micro and small enterprise, which basically gives guarantee to financial institutions for MSc loans being sanctioned for business purpose.
Okay.
So that's a brief about me.
Okay. That's wonderful, Richa. Um, I was wondering what question to ask you. So I'll ask you the very basic question that has been running in my mind since the time you said yes to be a guest this evening, half an hour back. So this is exactly the question I want to ask you. Uh, to me, when I thought that this week it would be very difficult to get a guest and put up a podcast ready for day after tomorrow, today being Wednesday, uh, evening that too. And tomorrow I have a very packed day, so I wasn't very sure how I'm going to arrange for someone's time and effort as well as my own time and effort. And you said yes immediately. So to me, it was like a miracle. Okay. Now my question to you, since this is the values workshop, I'm quite used to these kind of miracles happening very often. So much so that sometimes when the recording has ended and I'm just processing it, the Wi-Fi goes off. And I have no clue whether it will get processed or not. But I cannot do anything about it because it's out of my hands then. So I just wait. And sure enough, till date, not a single episode has been cancelled because of that kind of problem. So, how do you see the connection between miracles and our daily life?
There is always a connection between miracles and life. If there is no miracle, there would be no life, I feel. Because
Oh,
at every point of, obviously, because I always believe that there's always a super force, who is like making all the environment, all the major work. It's on an automatic mode. So it's a miracle. Who is running the days, the nights, the breath we are taking every day, so it's not happening. We are not doing anything. It's happening through some powerful force. So it's a miracle, right? You can't see the person who is operating it, how is it getting operated, but still it is happening. Now, if you think very deeply, you will come to know that there's miracle in everything. There's a miracle in a flower, how the flower comes, you just water the plants and then you see a bud coming, and then after some days, it blossoms into a nice, colorful, with a nice texture flower with nice petals, and you feel so happy about it. There was a day when there was not even a sign of any flower could come in that pot, and then one fine day you see a bud, coming up from that plant, and then you see a flower. So it's a miracle, right? How did that bud come? How did that flower, came? Did you do something? You just watered the plants. So there is miracle in that. There's miracle in everything if you see the God's presence in it.
okay. This is a wonderful thing. What I liked was that you actually brought it down to very basic things rather than make a big deal out of it. Uh, do you think there is a connection between science? Because some people who do not believe in God would call it science. But do you think there is a connection between science and this force or this superpower that you're talking about? If one were not to call it God, but a superpower, so that all people of all kinds of beliefs can buy into this. Do you think there's a connection?
Yes, being a science student, I would definitely believe in science. I would not deny that. And I think people who had not believed in science, maybe during this COVID period, they have realized that if we did not have vaccines, we would have not been having the success rates of survival. So it's a science which has made us 90% safe, okay, from that pandemic, I would say. So why the government, why our country was stressing so much on producing the vaccines and the drugs where there was no theory, like, there could be such kind of disease would come in and it would be life threatening. So science definitely has an prime importance in our lives, and there is a connection between what the science is. Our body itself is a science, right? You don't know how your machines, how your organs are being functioning. There's a science behind it, and the science will tell you, like, what kind of role functions, the benefits, is there in it. So science definitely is a part of our life.
Okay. Um, the one thing that I keep seeing very often in my life, and people who are uh, holding or adhering on to certain kind of thought process or values or morality or ethics, uh, one part I find is there is always a problem in the practicality of it, as many people call it. And yet they continue to pick up a subject and walk with the best version of how they see it. So very often I have lost clients because of certain value systems not matching. I have seen people go through trouble in their workforce where they do not get their adequate what could be called a position or a job or a project at times. At school, sometimes the people who, the children who work the hardest may not necessarily be getting their results in a manner which some people might use other methods and get them. How do you define this value system for yourself, and why do you do it? Because there are challenges.
Okay.
My question is more about the challenges part. There are
Yeah.
challenges. It's not easy.
So there's a good way of accepting it. Okay, if not today, maybe some other day, I may get my recognition. Maybe things would change. Some new good people would come in, which happens. It's not like the same people are going to last forever in an organization. There's always a rotation of people. Some new people come in, the old people go off, they get retired. So there's always a possibility of change. So hoping that if not today, I'm not getting my due recognition, or I'm not getting what I deserve to get because of those unfairness and those value conflicts where somebody is getting more preference just because, okay, their values is matching to their boss values and your values is against your boss values. So I think that having a positive attitude, being patient, accepting what is happening, and then waiting for the right time to come. Because if today you're facing some challenges, something which is not in your favor, definitely some time will come where things will come into your favor. So just wait, be patient, continue what you're doing it. No matter if you are not getting recognition, nothing is going to get lost. You being, it will be like a little less than what others are making it, but eventually you will be self-satisfied that what you had done is based on your values. You had not shifted your values based on your situation or based on your benefit.
This was a wonderful answer. One of the things that I realized, I want to bring up one thing that I remembered while you were talking. I was once upon a time a very bad engineer, and I was in a job which I disliked, and I was personally not good at it, and yet I had began my writing career then. So I started writing for greeting cards, and I was working uh, for a consultant who wasn't sitting in that office. I was representing that consultant in the office. But the rest of the office was working for that organization, and it was a very unhappy organization. The boss was very strict, rude, and there was a lot of inner politics, but I didn't know anybody, so there was nobody who was bothered about me. But one thing I strictly remembered when I remember when I think about that office is there was one person who was very kind to me and who was very, very encouraging of my writing ability, of what I wrote. He was the boss of the computer department, and he used to just sit with me and hear me out and say, this one is good, this one is not good. Wow, you're doing a wonderful job. You're such a creative person. And that kind of helped me go through a lot of testing times. And in many offices, many kinds of colleagues, bosses, people whom you do not relate to for various reasons, including values, of course, being an important aspect. I found there was somebody or the other with whom your systems matched. The person may not be the most important person of that office, or might sometimes even be a peon. In some offices, the peons were the most kindest to me, and sometimes I used to have chai with them, and we kind of related on a very strong human level. Do you have any incidents in personal or professional life that you remember where this kind of connection made you feel very good about yourself at a time which would have otherwise been testing, whether school, college, or work life, whenever?
Yes, Mandy, I definitely have such kind of experience because when you were mentioning about one friend of yours who encouraged you, I could immediately think of one person in my office too, where I could share my things, my thoughts, whether like if there's something I did not like about the way of working or the way of reciprocating my work, I would definitely go and talk to my friend, and I used to always thankfully because he was a very observant person and he knows me quite well, so he would rightly identify like where did I made a mistake, because it's not always that other person would make a mistake. He
Yes.
would tell me where did I go wrong, how could I have improved that thing or prevented that thing to happen so that it would have not resulted in a bad way. Because of this constant interaction with my friend, it really helped me to reduce my mistakes, to have a more better observation on how I'm handling things. Because
Yeah.
what happens is that when you're not being told where you're going wrong, to keep on doing that thing. And once you have been pointed it out, next time when you do it, you're more alert to it. Okay, last time I made a mistake, it had that consequence. I don't want to repeat it. Let me do it in a different way. Let me see if I can make it in a much more better way. And then constantly, when you keep on alerting your mind and you react based on what your mind is telling you, very in an informed way, it will definitely give you a better outcome than your previous one.
Wow. Uh, I'm sorry you brought up a topic that is so close to my heart. I remember my first guru in advertising, Nurul Islam, a guy who spent uh, at least the entire evening, many number of times when I was very disturbed about my talent. And it had got nothing to do with other people. There were times when there was politics, but I was never bothered about that because my own jump from engineering to advertising was a big one. I had to prove myself. And there were many, many days I spent where I think now when I look back, I remember the entire year. I must have asked him, do you think I should quit? Am I good enough? Am I good enough? Every day. And every day he said, you are doing well. Every day. Without praising me too much or without putting me down. And if I had work related questions, specific questions, how does this work? How does this work within marketing, advertising, fundamentals? He was always there to clear them up in a manner which encouraged me, saying that you're good enough, you're good enough. So much so that once in a while he used to just quickly send me to a meeting without any notice. He would say, you will go and face the client. And when I was unsure, he said, you know what is to be done, don't worry. And the seniors are there with you. You just go and laugh and have coffee and come. They have good coffee. So he used to encourage me with different ways of looking at things. In that sense, I feel thankful today. I'm glad that on camera I can do it. I have often used Facebook to remember him on his birthdays, and he's been no longer with us for I think 2 years now. But one of the most crucial and important people in my life. Coming to a question that is running in my head. Suppose this is one part of it where you have other people guiding you. This is more a quote unquote spiritual kind of question. When on a bad day, when things are happening at any point, sometimes personally also, when you go inside and you're questioning yourself about self-worth or anything. I've had friends who talk about dressing sense or their hairstyles or their work life or their love life or any such thing, any kind of place where their self-worth is at stake in their own heads. When you are faced with such a problem in any sphere of life, what is it that you fall back upon? What is it that you tell yourself to come back and be strong about it, or how do you face it?
Yeah. Obviously, I think many of us have gone through the situation where we start doubting our potentials and our achievements, and we feel that we are not good enough to, get things what we want, or I'm not good enough, okay, to sustain. So definitely, even I have faced it, and the only thing which I fall back upon, or that is my support, is uh, like you know talking to myself and keeping God in the communication. Like I would sit with myself and ask, God, why is it happening to me? Where am I going wrong? Communication with the God, as if like, you're talking to somebody so freely. There's not a single inch of a wheel in it. The way I'm feeling, the way I'm expressing it, and it happens in a when nobody is there, because people would think I'm like insane talking to myself. Whom am I talking to? So it's people do. I've read somewhere like when you start communicating, alone with yourself, and then you hear your own words. Sometimes there's so much of inside your head that you don't know what's happening, but when you speak it out, and you don't have to, if I speak it out in front of somebody, I will always have fear what the person would think, what am I speaking, whether the person is reliable. So to overcome those things, I think it's a safer way that I sit with myself and I start questioning, instead of in my head, I start opening my mouth and I start spitting it out, and then the only thing I give myself strength is that no matter how bad the things are, God is always will be there to take care of me. No matter what, He loves me so much that He would not do anything wrong to me. Even today, if I'm feeling that some things are going haywire, nothing is in my favor, I'm in a very terrible situation, but I know there is something good in it. Maybe I'm not able to see it now. Maybe down the line I would appreciate it that this thing has happened to me, because when trouble comes within you, it also makes you more strong. I feel things which you would have not been strong in your good times, your bad times makes you more strong. So anything from God, be it a good time, be it a bad time, I think it is always good for you only. It's just in the mindset that आज गलत हो रहा है, आज ठीक नहीं चल रहा है. लेकिन अगर आपका विश्वास है, like you said, कि your friend had more faith in your work than you had in your work. So faith itself is a miracle. Like your first question was to me was, do you believe in miracle? Having faith where nobody believes in you and somebody else believes in you, and because of their belief, you have become a more renowned advertising person. So had that support, that faith he had not had in you, you would have not reached to this
Yeah,
level now.
sure.
So
Um,
I think connection with God, and you connection with God is something which in everybody can get if they sit and they have those faith in it. They can beat any kind of obstacle, any kind of bad situation, because situation is just like very ephemeral. आज आया, कल चला गया, वापस कुछ आया, ये come and go है. तो जो चीज come and go होती है, ephemeral होती है, उसमें क्यों अपना टाइम वेस्ट करना है? जो बड़ी चीज है, जो गॉड है, आप उसमें अपना मन लगाओ.
okay. Interesting. I have a point of view that I want to bring up here, which is over a period of time, my learning is the bad situations wake us up to the potential that we have, or God, or faith, or whatever one wants to call it. I'm okay with all names. But the bigger learning that I've had in the last couple of years for sure is that the bad situation is the gift. It's not that you're supposed to get out of it and be happier. That though is there. Obviously, we are all happy when we are happy. Why do we need God at that point of time? Or any kind of support system, or faith, or surrender, or whatever you want to call it. The bigger thing that I realize is the bad situation is the one that makes you palpably alive. You can actually feel what are the possibilities available to you, what are you made of, for the strength to be realized, for your brains to work at their full potential, for your heart to have the strength of a lion, if I want to call it that, or any kind of situation that is really challenging you, will check whether you have the mettle to face it or solve it, or at least be observant of it. Mostly what tends to happen, my problem with a lot of believers, if I were to call it that, I don't want to give it a color because it's not about God or absence of God. That's a separate matter. That is everybody's individual thought to say. I find we are all addicted to good things only. We like to give it some name, or we want to get out of the position that we are in, the problem that we are in. We are in a hurry to get it done. So we'll do prayers, we'll do the talking that you mentioned. But the talking that you mentioned is the process that will make you grow. Whether
Yes.
aloud, or whether in front of the mirror, or whether in the bathroom, or whether you're sitting alone and quiet, or learning to meditate, or you're praying. Once that prayer is over and you stop begging for change and happiness, because that's natural. We all want to be happy. Who wants to be unhappy? But when all of that is crossed and you are in that position where you start accepting, you're saying, okay, this is the situation. I may know the answer today, I may know the answer tomorrow, or a new perspective will come to me, but I'll stand. I will not fall. I will take it, well, like a man, sometimes that they say it, but like a human being. I just take it. I am not one whiner. I will not keep crying, why this happened to me, why this happened to me. Some of the best people, most successful people, whenever I've read their interviews or their biographies or all kinds of fields, they've said this one thing in common. Say, we never asked why me. And I found that was a very beautiful point, because we crumble very fast. What are we afraid of? To use a phrase that we use very common, मिट्टी से ही आए, मिट्टी में ही जाएंगे हम, कितना और मतलब क्या प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है, इससे तो ज्यादा कुछ नहीं होने वाला. तो let's move from that force. And that is when I find the faith or belief, or this starts flowering. You mentioned one metaphor earlier, that how does the miracle of a bud changing to a flower happen? Through a lot of pain. That bud has to tear itself out, because the flower is inside it. So it has to tear itself. Every petal is earned. And it will still be only for a little while. Like within one season, 1 week, 2 weeks, there are flowers that last hardly for one day, for a few hours. I think it's a very important lesson to learn, because within this faith and this and that, all those discussions, people forget that the most important part is actually this part. The fight within, the success within, the ability to stand up and say, okay, it's okay. I'll face this problem. Let's see what happens. One of my very close relatives is going through a tough time studying and finding the difficulties of what all students do. He's working, studying. So I just gave him one line. I said, what is within you is stronger than your circumstances. And every now and then he quotes it back to me. What is within you is stronger than your circumstances. And that is enough. I don't think everybody, you and me also, when we get inspired by these friends or whatever, I had to learn. My guru gave me a lot of encouragement, happiness. But when he blasted the hell out of me. There were times that I held on to a question about the creative process for 4 months. After 4 months, I would have the daring to ask him, you had fired me for this job. What happened there? So then he would pinpoint, okay, this is what you did. You were being stupid. Okay. I was that afraid of him. So he was kind, he was generous, but he wasn't frivolous about it. He forced me to put on my best learnings forward and do the work. I find whatever little bit that I know of you, you come across as a person who's very sure of her mind. What is it that brings this clarity? Is there anything that you do? Do you meditate, or do you? What is it that you do? Because I don't know enough, but I know that you spend time with yourself. What is it that you would credit this clarity to? And are there times when you're confused? How do you come out of this to becoming clear?
Yes, I always had this question that what is meditation? I get to hear this more often from you, from few of my friends who keeps on saying that through meditation, they have really they have come out as a strong person where whatever bad situation, bad circumstances comes in, they are able to face it in a very composed manner, and instead of creating dramas and angers and bitterness and talking negative things, they are so much composed and calm and so much patient with themselves कि कुछ हुआ हो या नहीं हुआ, it's gonna same thing for them. And the credit which they would give it through this process is meditation. So I always had this in my mind, when they say meditation, what do they do in meditation? Like, what is it like they call meditation, which has transformed their behavior, their way of handling circumstances, and they had become such a good and nice personality. So, thankfully, when I had this question in my mind and asking about what is meditation, I came across an article in Speaking Tree, which I happened to read it in Economic Times. And there, the two lines of what is meditation cleared my head about. This is what I'm doing my whole day, every day. That means even I'm meditating. I was so happy about it. I have those lines with me, which would be add on to our listeners too. The line which was mentioned about what is meditation, the reply was, it is nothing but an attempt to reduce your distance between yourself and Parampurush. And this is what I meant when I said that you sit with yourself, let the thoughts come in, you pay attention to your thoughts, go to the root cause of your thought, key from where this thought generated, and then if it's a wrong, if you honestly accept that what you did was wrong, then you ask for forgiveness to God, you accept your mistake, and you try and see to it that you don't repeat it again. And that is how the God will be pleased by you and you will come closer to God. See, God also knows that we all are humans and we are bound to make mistakes. But what we learn from our mistakes, and if we don't repeat our mistakes, this is where we come one step closer to our God. So meditation is basically it is not like there has to be. Sometimes I used to think like we have to sit in a lotus posture and stretch out our arms and then close our thumb with the index finger and then like keep chanting mantra or the God's name. And I never believed in this process where I have to sit in this posture and give a physical trouble to myself, and then pressure of repeating the names, chanting the names, and what am I gaining in that? I'm just using my senses in doing this activity. I'm using my hands, my mind, my mouth in chanting the names. I'm not getting any satisfaction or any happiness in doing it. So I never believed in holding one particular posture and then only thinking repeatedly. What I believe in is like meditation is like having a normal free conversation with God, what you think, how things are with you, how things you feel it should be. And the more you talk, the more you converse, the more clarity comes in your mind. And also having some kind of spiritual teachings with you. There are so many blogs and so many articles on scriptures are there. So when you read it, you become more familiar with how life has described that particular situation. Maybe you know just the surface part of it, a very superficial part of it, but when you read deep, you will understand different nuances to that particular thing.
Subject.
So the more you read, the more you understand a particular thing. It gives more it feeds to your thoughts, to your mind, it's like a food to your thoughts. Reading on spiritual things and then comprehending it, revisiting it, what you read, how is it practical? How can you use it in a practical life? See, theory is one part. Once you know the theory, you should always, your next step would be putting into a practical thing. Like you said earlier, like there are many people who says, spiritual things, but there would be few people who lives on it. And the people who lives on it is actually getting the more crux of it. Like, they're actually living those things. Until and unless you don't live those things, you don't follow those things, you will not reap the benefit of it. Experiences like that. एक तरह आप बोलोगे मैंने ताजमहल देखा और एक जो पर्सन ताजमहल देख के आया उसका एक्सपीरियंस ही अलग होगा. So
Yeah,
once you have to feel through it, you have to go through it to understand it from the depth of it.
definitely. I think it's a beautiful last line to the episode where experience is more important. Once you've learned from different sources, you've heard discourses, you've read spiritual articles, been inspired, and then you start putting them down and living your values or your ethics in a manner which are practical. So you realize what kind of learnings come up in your own experience. So thank you so much. It's been a wonderful chat, short and very sweet. Thank you so much, Richa, for joining us today.
Thank you, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I actually didn't thought of like we are having this podcast. It was just like talking to a friend and coming up with your thoughts. What do you think?
Wonderful.
So it's really nice. This is my first podcast. Like,
Yeah.
thank you for giving me this opportunity to
Thank
speak
you.
my mind, and I hope it could be helpful to some of our listeners too.
Yeah, may all benefit from this volition of service that we have towards everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, yeah.
Thank you, Mantri. Have a great
Bye.
day.